As promised, here's my story about how I ended up being a barrister. So first of all, thank you to all 562 of you at the time of recording that voted on the poll over on my other channel, Black Belt Barrister, and this was the question chosen by 39% of you, so let's run with that one. When I chose the questions for the poll, they came out of lots of questions and comments over many videos over many years, but this was clearly the most popular question. And I think it's quite a specific question, actually, how I ended up being a barrister, rather than how did I train to be a barrister or how did I become a barrister. So I think for this, we need to go back quite a long way, because I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I've always had my own businesses and I've never worked for anybody else. As to why I never worked for anybody else, that's another question in the poll, perhaps for another video. But I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, right since the age of 10 or 12 when I was playing the keyboard and piano at events. And eventually I was being paid for this and realized that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in charge of my own business, my own life. And it wasn't until I was going for careers advice, in inverted commas, at school to see what sort of career I wanted. And in my mind, I didn't want a career. I wanted my own business. So any thought that I put into being a barrister or being anything else at that time was somewhat superficial, because in my mind, it was unnecessary because I wanted my own business. The careers advisor said I had to go and do some work experience somewhere. So I looked through the options where various firms had offered work experience to pupils at my school. And one of those was to go and shadow a very senior barrister around the Crown Courts in Birmingham. So that's what I did for about 2 weeks, and that sparked a bit of an interest in law in me, actually. So the only career of any interest to me then was to go off and become a barrister. So I went back to the careers advisor only to be disappointed, because the careers advisor then told me that it was going to be incredibly difficult, incredibly competitive, incredibly expensive. It was going to take a long time and I probably just wouldn't make it, was the impression this careers advisor was giving me. So being a barrister wasn't the first thing that I did. I did go to university, but not for law. Instead, I then set up my own business and have been in business ever since. And in fact, the first business I set up, I was only around 19 at the time. And before long, we had a bit of a legal dispute. So this sort of plays into the eventual reason as to why I became a barrister. And this first business was an online business of sorts. And whilst I could build websites at the time, I couldn't build really complex websites with really intricate back-end databases. So we needed to go to another firm to help to create this website. And at the time, there was some kind of government funding whereby if we were to put some money into the business as a new concept, the government scheme would add more money in for a specific contract that would allow us to get this business off the ground. And we had a business advisor appointed to us to look over the contract and look about how to get this off the ground. And we approached a company to build this website and back-end engine to the website. And initially the designs came across, they looked quite good, we thought we could work with it, but it was taking quite a long time, and then they started telling us that there were certain things that they couldn't do. So I started looking around for open source and ready-made solutions that would perhaps speed things up, help them along, and I did find such a thing. There was an open source PHP software solution that you could just upload to the website as long as you had a new skin and design on the front end of it. And then that would operate and do all of the things that we wanted this website to do. So I provided a copy of the open source engine to the development company and said, there you go, we just need the front skin redesigning and the admin skin redesigning, and then it should work. A few weeks later, we got the website ready, we had a bit of a launch, and it was rolling over okay. But then the company provided us an invoice to the tune of about £12,000, and in it, they were detailing a number of hours that they'd spent on each section of the back end of the website to build and create the software. But the problem was, they didn't create that software. I'd handed it them for free that I found it on some open source website. So I went into the back end just to check what actually they had done, and they hadn't really done anything. All they had done is the front skin of the website, which quite frankly I could have done myself because I was already building websites at that point anyway. So I wrote back to the development company and said, there's no way we're paying this £12,000. We hadn't contracted to pay that much money to develop this back end because we gave it you for free. And in any event, we'd got this arrangement where we paid a certain amount and the government would pay a certain amount of an invoice, And that was that. It certainly wasn't £12,000. They wrote back quite aggressively, demanding payment of the money, and we went back and forth for a couple of weeks until we received a threat to wind the company up if we didn't pay this invoice. So at just 19 years old was my first experience of going to see a lawyer to see what on earth do I do about these legal threats to wind up my fledgling company when it had barely just gotten off the ground. So a few £100 and one letter later, we never heard from this development company again, because what they were doing was borderline fraudulent, but certainly it was disingenuous because they were trying to charge for building something that we'd given them for free, and they certainly didn't build the back end of this website. So over the following years, I developed different businesses and went on to turn over millions of pounds. But my argument with the development company wasn't the only legal issue that I had to deal with. I had to look into trademark and copyright issues for the various logos that I was marketing my businesses with. I had to look into international contract and shipping laws because I was manufacturing products in China, bringing them into the UK to sell here. And essentially every aspect of business has its own intricate relationship with law. So all that time I was learning about how the law applies in this part of the business and how the law applies in that part of the business. So without even realizing it, I was developing this appetite and this interest in how law works. But the real tipping point through all of that ultimately pushed me into becoming a barrister was when we had an ongoing legal dispute and we had instructed a solicitor who, with all respect to the solicitor, didn't really understand the dispute and didn't know how to deal with it. And eventually we had to swap over to use public access barristers. A public access barrister is where you can go to a barrister without having to go to a solicitor first. Not all barristers can take what we call public access instructions, but certainly a growing number of barristers do now, and I take public access work as well, for example. So although the legal dispute had been going on for a couple of years or more, within a matter of months of instructing barristers, we brought the whole thing to an amicable close. And I had that light bulb moment where I thought to myself, every business needs to be able to come to a barrister like that will understand the problem. They will know how to resolve it. They will know how to deal with it. But more importantly, they understand the people behind the business. So it wasn't just about law. It wasn't just about procedure. It was about understanding how that legal process affects anybody in it. So this was one of those moments where I realized this is exactly what I want to do. And it reminded me of the enjoyment that I had in my work experience at 16 years old, then thinking that it was too expensive, too competitive, too difficult, and just wouldn't be able to do it. Only now I was further along, I had more money, I had more confidence, and I had the determination that this was what I wanted to do. So I continued running my businesses, but at the same time, I set up a barrister's chambers to market other barristers' services. I did a law degree and bar school back to back and became a barrister myself because I felt that I could do for other businesses exactly what those barristers did for me and my business. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to tell this story is that there isn't just one path and there isn't one opportunity. Life is full of many different opportunities that you can take at any point, and any one of those situations or any one of those events can change the direction of your life, and you can make a choice to do something or not to do something. But I think it needs to be your choice, because when I was at school, I was sort of forced to make a choice. And then when I made the choice, I was forced not to make that choice. And I went round in circles, not really making my own choices. And it was only when I started making my own choices that I made them work. Because as many of you will know from the embroidery of my black belt and my philosophy, and that is give yourself no choice. Because each of us has a bank of choices at any stage of our lives. We have the choice to do something and we have the choice not to do something. We have the choice to do it and we have the choice to give up. We also have the choice not to give up. But if you are so determined that you want something to happen, my philosophy is give yourself no choice, because ultimately the only person that can make that choice is you. You are the one that chooses to give something up, or you choose to listen to someone else instead of your own desires and your own determination. And it's really quite interesting that every barrister I meet and every bar student that I met when I was training to be a barrister have their own story as to how they ended up being a barrister or a bar student at the time. Everybody had their own experience, and many of them came out of a legal dispute, whether that was a divorce, whether that was a business dispute, or in some cases they were from a country and they'd witnessed some awful atrocity in front of their eyes and decided that they wanted to help contribute to the justice system. So at the bar training course and all of the events that all of us go to with our respective Inns of Court, we all discuss what was our story in coming to the bar course in the first place. So for me, this was my story about how I ended up becoming a barrister. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you find some inspiration in it. Please do drop me comments and let me know, have you thought about a career change? Have you thought about becoming a lawyer? Or has this given you some inspiration that you just can change the direction of your life and do what you want to do? Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing my story. Keep coming back, and I'll see you next time.